more than just sex, discovering the soulful depths of homosexual love. The cathedral bells were chiming midnight when Father Sebastian Rodriguez first saw him, and in that moment, 30 years of celibacy and devotion to God collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. The man stood silhouetted against the stained glass windows, moonlight streaming through centuries-old colored glass to paint his face in blues and golds. And Sebastian felt something crack open inside his chest, that he had spent his entire adult life keeping sealed shut. The stranger was tall and lean with dark hair that caught the light, wearing simple jeans and a white button-down shirt that somehow looked elegant on his frame. He moved through the empty cathedral with the quiet reverence of someone who understood sacred spaces, his fingers trailing along the wooden pews as if he were reading Braille, searching for something he could not name. Sebastian should have announced his presence, should have asked, what brought someone to St. Margaret Cathedral at such an hour? But instead, he remained hidden in the shadows of the confessional, watching this beautiful intruder explore his sanctuary with wonder written across his features. The man stopped before the altar, tilting his head back to study the massive crucifix suspended above. And when he spoke, his voice echoed through the vaulted space like a prayer. "I do not know if you are listening," he said to the Christ figure, "but I need to find something real in this world, something that matters more than the emptiness I carry everywhere I go." Sebastian felt those words pierce through him like arrows finding their mark. He had spent 3 decades offering comfort to others, dispensing wisdom about faith and hope and love. But he had never heard such raw honesty spoken in his church, such naked vulnerability, offered up to God without pretense or performance. The stranger sat in the front pew and buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of his soul. Sebastian found himself moving before he had consciously decided to, stepping out of the shadows and into the candlelit nave. "I am sorry," the man said when he noticed Sebastian approaching, jumping to his feet with embarrassment coloring his cheeks. "I did not realize anyone was here. I should not have. I will leave. Please do not go." Sebastian heard himself saying, his voice gentle despite the chaos erupting inside his chest. "This is God's house, and you are welcome here, whatever has brought you to seek solace in the middle of the night." The man looked at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, and Sebastian saw pain there that rivaled his own loneliness, that seemed to stretch back years, or perhaps lifetimes. "I am not sure God wants someone like me in his house," the stranger said quietly. Sebastian stepped closer, close enough to see the silver threading through the man's dark hair, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne, mixed with something indefinably masculine that made Sebastian's pulse quicken in ways that terrified him. "God wants everyone in his house," he said, "especially those who are suffering." "My name is Gabriel," the man said, extending his hand with a smile that transformed his entire face. "Gabriel Martinez." Sebastian replied, taking the offered hand and feeling electricity shoot up his arm at the contact. "Father Sebastian Rodriguez." Gabriel's eyes widened slightly at the title, but he did not pull his hand away. "A priest," he said softly. "I should have known by the collar, though you do not look like any priest I have ever met." Sebastian became acutely aware that he was still holding Gabriel's hand, that their fingers were intertwined in a way that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. He forced himself to let go, though every cell in his body protested the separation. "What brought you here tonight?" Gabriel asked, settling back into the pew and looking up at Sebastian with genuine curiosity. "Do priests often wander their churches at midnight? Or am I witnessing some secret ritual?" Sebastian laughed, despite himself surprised by the sound in the sacred space. "I could not sleep," He admitted taking a seat beside Gabriel, but leaving careful space between them. Sometimes I come here to think, to pray, to find peace when the world feels too heavy. And tonight the world feels heavy. Gabriel observed, his voice carrying understanding that went beyond casual sympathy. Tonight everything feels heavy. Sebastian confessed, shocking himself with his honesty. I have been a priest for 15 years, and lately I find myself questioning everything I thought I knew about faith, about purpose, about what God wants from me. Gabriel studied him with those storm-colored eyes, and Sebastian felt as if he were being seen in a way that no one had ever looked at him before. What kind of questioning? Gabriel asked gently. Sebastian was quiet for a long moment, listening to the silence of the cathedral. The way sound seemed to hang in the air before being absorbed by stone and wood and centuries of whispered prayers. I entered the seminary when I was 18, he said finally. I thought I heard God calling me to serve him, to dedicate my life to something greater than myself. But now you are not sure, Gabriel said, and it was not a question. Now I wonder if I was running away from something rather than running toward God. Sebastian admitted the words, feeling like confession in the truest sense. I wonder if I chose this life because it felt safe, because it gave me a reason to avoid the complications of love and intimacy and all the messy, beautiful parts of being human. Gabriel was quiet for several heartbeats, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I understand running away from love, he said. I have been doing it my entire adult life. Sebastian turned to look at him, fully seeing something in Gabriel's expression that mirrored his own inner turmoil. What are you running from? He asked. Gabriel smiled sadly, his gaze fixed on the altar. The same thing you are, I think, he said. The terrifying possibility that love might be real, that it might be worth the risk of getting hurt, that it might be exactly what we need even when it comes in forms we never expected. They sat in comfortable silence after that, two men sharing space and secrets in the presence of something larger than themselves. Sebastian found himself studying Gabriel's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way candlelight played across his features, the gentle rise and fall of his chest as he breathed. Tell me about your life, Sebastian said eventually, surprising himself with the request. What do you do when you are not visiting churches at midnight? Gabriel laughed, a sound that seemed to fill the cathedral with warmth. I am a photographer, he said. I travel around, taking pictures of places and people, trying to capture moments of beauty and truth in a world that often feels empty of both. That sounds lonely, Sebastian observed. It is, Gabriel agreed, but loneliness felt safer than the alternative, at least until recently. What changed recently? Sebastian asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Gabriel turned to meet his eyes, and Sebastian felt the air between them charge with something electric and dangerous and absolutely right. I met someone who made me realize that safety is not the same as living, Gabriel said quietly. Someone who made me want to stop running and start discovering what it might mean to truly connect with another person. Sebastian's heart was beating so hard he was certain Gabriel could hear it echoing through the cathedral. The rational part of his mind, the part trained in theology and doctrine, was screaming warnings about temptation and sin and the vows he had taken, but a deeper part of him, a part that had been silent for 30 years, was singing with recognition and joy. Gabriel, he started to say, but the other man held up a hand to stop him. I know what you are going to say, Gabriel said gently. You are going to tell me that this is impossible, that you have made vows to God, that what I am suggesting goes against everything you believe and everything you have committed your life to. Sebastian nodded mutely, unable to form words around the emotion clogging his throat. But what if love is not the enemy of faith? Gabriel continued, his voice gaining strength and conviction. What if love is the point of faith, the thing that connects us to the divine and to each other? What if God put us both in this place at this moment because he wanted us to find something sacred together? Sebastian felt tears threatening at the corners of his eyes, overwhelmed by the beauty and impossibility of what Gabriel was suggesting. Even if that were true, he whispered, even if this feeling between us is somehow blessed rather than cursed. I do not know how to love someone, Gabriel. I have never allowed myself to learn. Gabriel reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement so Sebastian could pull away if he chose, and gently touched the priest's face. Then we will learn together, he said softly. We will discover what it means to love with our souls, as well as our bodies, what it means to find the sacred in the intimate, what it means to worship God through loving each other completely. Sebastian closed his eyes at the touch, feeling something fundamental shift inside him, like tectonic plates, rearranging themselves after centuries of stillness. When he opened them again, Gabriel was looking at him with such tenderness that it took his breath away. I am scared, Sebastian admitted. So am I, Gabriel replied. But I am more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what this could have been than I am of discovering what it actually is. Sebastian leaned into Gabriel's touch, allowing himself for the first time in his adult life to want something purely for himself. The cathedral around them seemed to hold its breath as if the very stones were waiting to see what choice he would make. Kiss me, Sebastian whispered the words barely audible, but carrying the weight of a decision that would change everything. Gabriel moved slowly, giving Sebastian time to change his mind. But Sebastian did not want time, did not want to think or analyze or pray for guidance. He wanted to feel, to experience, to discover what had been missing from his carefully constructed life of service and sacrifice. Their lips met with the gentleness of a first prayer, soft and reverent and full of wonder. Sebastian had imagined physical intimacy as something base and carnal, something that would diminish rather than elevate the spirit. But this kiss felt like communion, like two souls recognizing each other across the vast loneliness of human existence. When they separated, both men were breathing hard, their foreheads pressed together as they tried to process what had just happened between them. I should feel guilty, Sebastian said wonderingly. I should feel like I have betrayed my vows, betrayed God, betrayed everything I have committed my life to. But you do not, Gabriel observed. But I do not, Sebastian confirmed. I feel like I have finally found something I did not even know I was looking for. They left the cathedral together that night, walking out into the cool air of early morning, with their hands intertwined, and their hearts wide open to possibilities they had never dared to imagine. Sebastian felt as if he was seeing the world with new eyes, as if colors were brighter, and sounds were clearer, and everything around him was alive with meaning and beauty. Gabriel lived in a small apartment above an art gallery in the oldest part of the city, and as they climbed the narrow stairs together, Sebastian marveled at how natural it felt to follow this man home, how right it seemed to be taking this leap of faith into unknown territory. The apartment was filled with Gabriel's photographs, images of landscapes and cityscapes and people caught in moments of unguarded emotion. Sebastian moved through the space, slowly studying each image, seeing the world through Gabriel's eyes, and understanding for the first time what it meant to view life as something beautiful and worth capturing. You see beauty everywhere, Sebastian observed, stopping before a photograph of an elderly couple holding hands on a park bench. Their faces lined with age, but their eyes bright with love. I am learning to, Gabriel replied, coming to stand beside him. For years I only saw loneliness and pain, but recently I have started noticing the light that exists even in dark places, the connections that bind us together, even when we feel most alone. Sebastian turned to face him, seeing his own transformation reflected in Gabriel's expression. "Is this what love feels like?" he asked. "This sense of recognition, this feeling that I have been asleep my entire life and am only now waking up." Gabriel cupped Sebastian's face in his hands, thumbs brushing across the priest's cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "This is what the beginning of love feels like," he said softly. "The awakening, the recognition, the moment when you realize that another person's happiness has become more important to you than your own safety." They made love that night with the reverence of two people discovering something sacred, taking their time to learn each other's bodies and souls with equal devotion. Sebastian had expected physical intimacy to be awkward or mechanical, something to be gotten through rather than experienced, but Gabriel approached his body like it was a work of art, touching and kissing and exploring with such worship that Sebastian felt tears of gratitude streaming down his face. When Gabriel entered him for the first time, Sebastian understood why mystics wrote about union with the divine in such ecstatic terms. This was transcendence, this joining of flesh and spirit, this complete surrender to love and trust and vulnerability. He cried out Gabriel's name like a prayer, his hands clutching at his lover's shoulders, as waves of pleasure and emotion crashed over him in equal measure. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in Gabriel's bed, their bodies slick with sweat and their hearts beating in synchrony. Sebastian traced patterns on Gabriel's chest with his fingertips, marveling at the intimacy of being allowed to touch another person, this way to know their body as well as their soul. "I love you," Gabriel whispered into the darkness, the words carrying the weight of absolute truth. "I love you too," Sebastian replied, and felt something inside him that had been frozen for decades finally thaw completely. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and Sebastian dreamed of light streaming through stained glass windows, of voices raised in hymns of praise, of hands joined in prayer, and bodies joined in love. All of it sacred, all of it blessed, all of it exactly as God intended. He woke to sunlight streaming through Gabriel's bedroom window, and the sound of his lover moving around the kitchen making coffee, and humming softly to himself. Sebastian lay still for a moment, absorbing the domesticity of the scene, the simple miracle of waking up beside someone who loved him. "Good morning, beautiful," Gabriel said when Sebastian emerged from the bedroom wearing one of Gabriel's shirts and nothing else. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in years," Sebastian admitted, accepting the cup of coffee Gabriel offered and breathing in the rich aroma. "How is it possible that everything feels different now that the world looks completely transformed from yesterday?" Gabriel smiled and pulled him close, pressing a kiss to the top of Sebastian's head. "Because yesterday you were living half a life," he said gently. "Today you are living fully loving, fully allowing yourself to experience everything you have been denying yourself for 30 years. Sebastian leaned into Gabriel's embrace, feeling safer and more at peace than he ever had in all his years of prayer and meditation. But even as he reveled in this newfound happiness, a part of his mind was already starting to worry about the complications they would face, the impossible choice between love and duty that loomed ahead of them. Gabriel seemed to sense his thoughts because he pulled back to look into Sebastian's eyes with understanding and determination. "We will figure it out," he said firmly. "Whatever obstacles we face, whatever choices we have to make, we will face them together." "But my vows," Sebastian said quietly. "My commitment to the church, to God, to the people who depend on me for spiritual guidance. How can I reconcile loving you with everything I have promised to be?" Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, his hand gently stroking Sebastian's hair as he considered the question. "Maybe the question is not whether you can reconcile these things," he said finally, "but whether God is asking you to expand your understanding of what it means to serve him. Sebastian looked at him questioningly, and Gabriel continued. You have spent 15 years as a priest helping people find faith and hope and meaning in their lives. But what if your greatest service to God is not in denying love, but in embracing it, not in staying separate from human connection, but in demonstrating that love and faith can exist together, that the sacred and the intimate are not opposing forces? Sebastian felt something shift inside him at Gabriel's words, a new way of seeing that felt both revolutionary and perfectly obvious. What are you suggesting? He asked. I am suggesting that maybe God brought us together, not to test your faith, but to deepen it, Gabriel said. Maybe your calling is not to choose between love and service, but to find a way to serve through love, to minister to people, not from a place of separation, but from a place of profound connection and understanding. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, completely contrary to everything Sebastian had been taught about priesthood, and yet somehow feeling more true than anything he had ever been told. But how, he asked, how do I serve God and love you without destroying everything I have built, without scandalizing the congregation, without losing everything I have worked for? Gabriel took Sebastian's hands in his own, his touch grounding and reassuring. We start slowly, he said. We take time to understand what this means, to explore what form our love and your service can take together. Maybe it means finding a new way to be a priest. Maybe it means finding a new way to serve God outside the traditional church structure. Maybe it means being pioneers, showing the world that love and faith can coexist in ways that people have never imagined. Sebastian felt tears pricking at his eyes again, overwhelmed by Gabriel's faith in their future, and his willingness to walk this uncertain path together. You would do that? He asked. You would wait while I figure out how to reconcile these parts of myself, how to honor both my love for you and my calling to serve. Gabriel lifted Sebastian's hands to his lips, pressing gentle kisses to his knuckles. I would wait forever, if that is what it took, he said simply. But I do not think it will take forever, Sebastian. I think you are going to discover that love and service are not opposing forces, but complementary ones, that loving me will make you a better priest, not a worse one. Sebastian pulled Gabriel into a fierce embrace, holding him tightly as he tried to process the magnitude of what was happening in his life. In the space of 12 hours, everything he thought he knew about himself, about love, about God, about his purpose in the world, had been transformed completely. They spent the next several hours talking, sharing stories from their childhoods, their fears and dreams, and the experiences that had shaped them into the men they had become. Sebastian learned that Gabriel had grown up in a deeply religious Hispanic family, that he had struggled with his sexuality for years before finally accepting it as part of God's plan for his life. Gabriel learned that Sebastian had entered the seminary partly to escape his own growing awareness of his attraction to men, that he had convinced himself that celibacy was not a sacrifice, but a blessing, a way to avoid confronting truths about himself that seemed incompatible with his faith.
As the day wore on, Sebastian felt layers of pretense and self-deception falling away, replaced by an honesty and authenticity that he had never experienced before. With Gabriel, he could be completely himself, could explore thoughts and feelings that he had never dared to acknowledge, could imagine possibilities for his life that extended far beyond the narrow confines he had constructed for himself. When evening came, they walked together through the city, holding hands openly for the first time in Sebastian's life. He expected to feel exposed or ashamed, but instead he felt proud and joyful, grateful for the chance to claim this love publicly, to let the world see that he belonged to someone, and someone belonged to him. They had dinner at a small Italian restaurant, where Gabriel was clearly a regular, the owner greeting him warmly and making gentle jokes about Sebastian being his new boyfriend. Sebastian blushed at the casual acknowledgement of their relationship, but he did not correct the assumption, did not hide behind his collar, or his vows, or his fear. I have never been someone's boyfriend before, Sebastian confided to Gabriel over dessert, his voice soft with wonder. How does it feel? Gabriel asked, his eyes sparkling with affection and amusement. It feels like the most natural thing in the world, Sebastian replied honestly. It feels like what I was always supposed to be, but never had the courage to become. Gabriel reached across the table to take Sebastian's hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that was becoming as familiar as breathing. You have more courage than you realize, he said gently. It takes incredible bravery to question everything you have built your life around, to open yourself to love when you have spent decades avoiding it, to choose growth over safety. Sebastian squeezed Gabriel's hand, drawing strength from the contact. I do not feel brave, he admitted. I feel terrified most of the time, like I am walking on ice that might crack beneath me at any moment. But you are walking anyway, Gabriel pointed out. That is what courage is, Sebastian, not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving forward despite it. They returned to Gabriel's apartment that night and made love again. But this time it was different, deeper, more connected than their first tentative exploration. Sebastian felt as if he were discovering not just Gabriel's body, but his own, learning what it meant to give and receive pleasure, to be vulnerable and strong simultaneously, to worship God through worshipping the person he loved. Gabriel was endlessly patient with him, guiding him through unfamiliar territory with gentle encouragement and infinite tenderness. When Sebastian cried from the overwhelming intensity of feeling so much, after decades of feeling so little, Gabriel held him and whispered words of love and reassurance until the storm of emotion passed. I never knew it could be like this, Sebastian said as they lay together afterwards, his head pillowed on Gabriel's chest and their legs tangled together beneath the sheets. Like what Gabriel asked, his fingers combing through Sebastian's hair with lazy affection. So connected, Sebastian replied. So much more than just physical, so much deeper than I ever imagined possible. I understand now why people call it making love rather than just having sex, because that is what we are doing, creating something between us that is bigger than either of us alone. Gabriel kissed the top of Sebastian's head, his arms tightening around his lover's body. That is what I have been trying to tell you, he said softly. Love is not just about desire or attraction or even compatibility, though all of those things matter. Love is about souls recognizing each other, about two people becoming more together than they ever could be apart. Sebastian lifted his head to look at Gabriel, seeing his own feelings reflected in those storm-colored eyes. Is it always like this? He asked. This intensity, this sense of completeness, this feeling that you have found your other half. Gabriel smiled and cupped Sebastian's face gently. No, he said honestly. Most love is not like this. Most connections are not this deep or this immediate or this transformative. What we have is rare, Sebastian, precious beyond measure. That is why it is worth fighting for, worth changing your entire life for, if necessary. Sebastian felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. Gratitude for Gabriel's love, for this second chance at life, for the courage to seize happiness when it was offered. I want to fight for this, he said fiercely. I want to find a way to love you and serve God and be the man I was meant to be, all at the same time. Gabriel's smile was radiant, transforming his entire face with joy and relief. Then we will fight together, he said simply. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, whatever obstacles we face, we will figure out how to build a life that honors both love and faith. The next few weeks passed in a blur of discovery and planning and tentative steps toward a future neither of them could have imagined just a month before. Sebastian continued his duties at the cathedral, but he found himself approaching his work with new energy and insight, his sermons taking on depth and authenticity that surprised his congregation and delighted his superiors. He preached about love as the highest calling, about the courage required to live authentically, about the ways that God worked through human connection and relationships. He never spoke directly about his own situation, but those who listened carefully could hear something different in his voice, a conviction born of personal experience rather than theological theory. Gabriel continued his photography work, but he began focusing on images of couples and families, capturing moments of intimacy and connection with an understanding that came from finally experiencing those things himself. His work took on new meaning and power, and several galleries expressed interest in mounting exhibitions of his recent photographs. They spent every free moment together, learning each other's rhythms and preferences, discovering the thousand small ways that two lives could interweave to create something beautiful and sustainable. Sebastian learned that Gabriel sang in the shower and left coffee rings on furniture and cried during romantic movies. Gabriel learned that Sebastian talked in his sleep and hoarded books and made the most amazing scrambled eggs on Sunday mornings. But even as they built this new life together, Sebastian struggled with the growing tension between his public role and his private truth. He had not yet told anyone at the church about Gabriel, had not revealed that the priest who counselled others about spiritual matters was himself undergoing the most profound spiritual transformation of his life. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in late spring when Bishop Martinez called Sebastian to his office for what he described as a routine check-in about parish matters. Sebastian sat across from the elderly bishop, trying to maintain his composure while his heart raced with anxiety about what the conversation might reveal. "You seem different lately," Sebastian the bishop observed, his keen eyes studying the younger priest with interest. "There is something in your demeanour, in your preaching, that suggests significant personal growth or change. I am curious about what has prompted this transformation." Sebastian felt his mouth go dry, uncertain how much to reveal or how to explain what had happened to him without exposing Gabriel to potential consequences. "I have been doing a great deal of soul-searching lately, Your Excellency," he said carefully, "questioning my understanding of love and service and what God calls us to do with our lives." The bishop leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful rather than concerned. "That is healthy, Sebastian," he said gently. "A priest who never questions his faith or his calling is a priest who has stopped growing. Tell me about these questions you have been exploring." Sebastian took a deep breath, knowing that this conversation would determine the course of his future, that honesty might cost him everything, but dishonesty would cost him his soul. "I have been wondering whether love and service are truly incompatible," he said slowly. "Whether a priest's calling to serve God might be enhanced rather than diminished by experiencing human love in its fullest form." The bishop's eyebrows rose slightly, but his expression remained calm and interested. "That is a profound question, Sebastian," he said. "Are you speaking theoretically, or has something specific prompted this line of inquiry?" Sebastian felt Gabriel's love, like a warm presence beside him, giving him courage to speak his truth, regardless of the consequences. "I have fallen in love, Your Excellency," he said quietly. "Deeply, completely, irreversibly, in love with someone who has shown me dimensions of faith and service that I never knew existed." The bishop was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands folded on his desk as he processed Sebastian's confession. "May I ask with whom you have fallen in love?" he said finally, his voice gentle but serious. "With a man named Gabriel Martinez," Sebastian replied, meeting the bishop's eyes directly. "A photographer, a man of deep faith and profound goodness, someone who has challenged me to expand my understanding of what it means to love God and serve others." Bishop Martinez nodded slowly. showing no surprise at the revelation of Gabriel's gender. The name Martinez is familiar, he said thoughtfully. Would this be Gabriel Martinez, the photographer, the one whose work on faith and community has been featured in several Catholic publications? Sebastian felt a surge of surprise and hope. You know Gabriel's work? He asked. I do indeed, the bishop replied, with a slight smile. His photographs of our Corpus Christi procession last year were extraordinary, capturing the spiritual dimension of the celebration in ways that words never could. He has a gift for seeing the sacred in the everyday, for revealing God's presence in human experience. Sebastian felt tears prick at his eyes, overwhelmed by the bishop's unexpected familiarity with Gabriel's work and the respect in his voice when he spoke about it. Yes, Sebastian said softly. That is exactly what he does, what he has taught me to do as well. He has shown me that love and faith are not opposing forces, but complementary ones, that serving God can include serving the person you love. That ministry can take many forms. The bishop was quiet again, his expression thoughtful as he considered Sebastian's words. This is not a simple matter, Sebastian, he said finally. The Church's teachings on celibacy are clear, and there will be those who see your relationship as incompatible with your vows and your calling. Sebastian nodded, having expected this response. I understand that. Your Excellency, he said, but I also believe that God works in mysterious ways, that sometimes he calls us to love in forms that challenge conventional wisdom, that expand our understanding of what is possible and holy. Bishop Martinez leaned forward, his eyes intense but not unkind. Tell me about this love, Sebastian, he said. Help me understand why you believe it is compatible with your calling rather than contrary to it. Sebastian felt his heart open as he began to describe what Gabriel meant to him, how their love had deepened rather than diminished, his faith, how understanding romantic love had enhanced his ability to comprehend God's love for humanity. He spoke about the ways that caring for Gabriel had taught him new dimensions of service, how their relationship had become a form of prayer, a way of worshipping God through cherishing one of his creations. As Sebastian talked, he saw something shift in the bishop's expression, a recognition or understanding that gave him hope. When he finished speaking, the room was quiet, except for the ticking of an old clock on the wall. I have known you for 5 years, Sebastian, the bishop said finally. I have watched you grow from an uncertain young priest into a confident spiritual leader, and I have always sensed that there was more depth in you than you were able to access. If this relationship has unlocked that depth, if it has made you a more effective minister rather than a less devoted one, then perhaps we need to reconsider our assumptions about what God requires of his servants. Sebastian felt hope bloom in his chest, like a flower opening to sunlight. What are you saying, Your Excellency? He asked. I am saying that the Church is changing slowly, but inevitably, the bishop replied. There are conversations happening at the highest levels about celibacy, requirements about the nature of love and service, about how we can best serve God in a world that is very different from the one in which our current rules were established. Sebastian felt his hands trembling with emotion and possibility. Does that mean he started to ask, but the bishop held up a hand to stop him? It means that we are going to proceed carefully and thoughtfully, the bishop said. You will continue your duties here while we explore what options might be available, what precedents exist, what conversations need to happen with Rome. This will not be quick or easy, Sebastian, but if your love for this man truly enhances rather than detracts from your service to God, then we will find a way to honour both. Sebastian felt tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the bishop's unexpected openness and support. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for listening, for understanding, for giving us hope that love and faith can coexist. The bishop smiled, the expression transforming his stern features with warmth and compassion. Love is the foundation of all faith, Sebastian, he said gently. If we cannot find a way to honour pure love when we encounter it, then we have lost sight of what God truly calls us to be. Sebastian left the bishop's office feeling as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, as if he could finally breathe freely after months of holding his breath. He drove straight to Gabriel's apartment, bursting through the door with news of the conversation and hope for their future. Gabriel listened with growing amazement and joy as Sebastian recounted every detail of his meeting with the bishop, the unexpected support and understanding they had encountered, the possibility that love and service might indeed be compatible in ways they had dared to dream. When Sebastian finished talking, Gabriel pulled him into a fierce embrace, holding him tightly as they both cried with relief and gratitude and overwhelming love. I cannot believe it, Gabriel whispered against Sebastian's hair. I cannot believe that it might actually be possible, that we might not have to choose between love and calling. Sebastian pulled back to look at Gabriel's face, seeing his own joy and wonder reflected there. We still have a long way to go, he said gently. The bishop warned me that this will not be quick or easy, that there will be obstacles and opposition and difficult conversations ahead. Gabriel cupped Sebastian's face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that continued to fall. I do not care how long it takes or how difficult it is, he said fiercely. We have already overcome the biggest obstacle, which was believing that our love was possible and worthy and blessed. Everything else is just logistics. Sebastian laughed through his tears, struck by Gabriel's ability to distill complex situations down to their essential truths. Just logistics, he repeated. I love how you make it sound so simple. Love is simple, Gabriel replied with a smile that lit up his entire face. Everything else is complicated, but love itself is the simplest thing in the world. Two souls recognizing each other, two hearts choosing to beat in rhythm, two lives deciding to become one, life lived together. They celebrated that night with a dinner that Gabriel cooked from scratch, candles and wine and conversation that ranged from practical planning to philosophical speculation about what their future might hold. Sebastian marvelled at how domestic happiness felt, how natural it seemed to share meals and stories and dreams with the person he loved. Later, they made love with a passion and tenderness that seemed to contain all their hopes for the future, all their gratitude for the present, all their determination to build something beautiful together, regardless of the obstacles they might face. Sebastian cried again as Gabriel moved inside him, overwhelmed by the physical and emotional intimacy, by the miracle of being completely known and completely accepted by another human being. I love you beyond measure, Gabriel whispered, as they moved together in perfect synchrony, their bodies and souls joined in worship of the love they had discovered. I love you beyond words, Sebastian replied, his voice breaking with emotion as pleasure and connection crashed over him in waves that seemed to originate in his soul rather than his body. Afterwards, they lay entwined in the darkness, talking quietly about practical matters, about how to navigate the coming months, about what steps they would need to take to build a sustainable life together. But beneath the practical planning was a current of pure joy, a celebration of love, triumphant over fear of truth, victorious over pretense. The months that followed were indeed challenging, filled with meetings and conversations and bureaucratic processes that sometimes seemed designed to test their patience and commitment. There were conservative members of the congregation who struggled to accept the changes they sensed in their priest, progressive members who celebrated his newfound authenticity, and church officials who needed to be convinced that love could enhance rather than compromise pastoral effectiveness. Through it all, Gabriel remained Sebastian's anchor and inspiration, supporting him through difficult conversations, celebrating small victories, reminding him always that their love was worth whatever struggles it required. Gabriel's photography continued to flourish, his images of love and faith attracting attention from galleries and publications around the world. Sebastian's preaching reached new heights of power and authenticity as he drew on his personal experience of transformation to speak about love, courage, and the ways that God worked through human relationships. His congregation grew as word spread about the priest, who spoke about faith from a place of lived experience rather than theoretical